Hello and welcome to the viewers of this video. This is the Orange Fan here, bringing you another entry for the franchise discussion category. This video will be dedicated to the recap and thoughts for issue 6 of the Young Justice tie-in comics, Fears. We begin this issue at Mount Justice on July 20th, where Robin is thinking to himself about how he became Batman's apprentice. Before Robin was Batman's protege, he and his family were performers in Jack Haley's circus, the Flying Graysons, which consisted of not just Robin and his parents, but also Robin's uncle, aunt, and older cousin. The Flying Graysons' most famous, but also most dangerous performance was the trapeze act without a net. And because of how dangerous this particular performance is, and because of his young age, Robin never actually got to participate in this particular performance. But he did say that he got the best seat in the house, as he puts it. He also brings up that Jack Haley was like a grandfather to him, especially because Robin's grandfathers had passed away some time before he was born. One day, which took place 4 years before the events of Season 1, the crime boss Tony Zuko tried to extort money from Jack Haley, but Jack Haley refused because he ran an honest business. Tony Zuko's response to this refusal was to sabotage the Flying Graysons' performance. So that particular day, or that particular night, I should say, when the Flying Graysons performed their usual trapeze act, it ended with disaster. Robin's parents, aunt, and cousin had died, and his uncle survived, but he was paralyzed for life and unable to take care of Robin. But Bruce Wayne happened to be one of the audience members that particular night, and Bruce Wayne took Robin under his wing, and Robin learned that Bruce Wayne was truly Batman, and that Batman had suffered a similar tragedy when he was younger. So Robin had officially become the apprentice of the Dark Knight, and one of, if not the first crime-fighting event that they did together was when they confronted Tony Zuko, and they were able to bring him to justice. Soon enough, though, Kid Flash snaps Robin out of his trip down memory lane, pointing out what Superboy had just said. And that happened at the end of the previous issue, Part 1, where Superboy admitted that he had thoughts about destroying Superman. And he says that he remembers those thoughts being put into his head during the time he was in his pod at Cadmus. And the other members of the Young Justice team do acknowledge that they don't know how much Cadmus had programmed, or what exactly Cadmus programmed into Superboy before he was released from his pod in the first 2 episodes. But they also bring up that Superboy has done a lot of good in the little amount of time that he's been out of his pod. And they assure Superboy that they do consider him to be one of them, and that he should put those thoughts behind him. As a way to change the uncomfortable topic and to find a more lighthearted topic, Kid Flash brings up that Miss Martian hasn't told her origin story, and the others express interest in hearing her origin story. So Miss Martian is more than happy to oblige and tell the tale of how she became her uncle's apprentice when it comes to being a superhero. So Miss Martian explains that Martians actually live underground because the surface of Mars is unhospitable. And family is also very important. Yes, family is a very important value, concept, whatever you want to call it, to Martians. And Martians mostly communicate telepathically. And the families are actually quite large. Martian families are generally quite large. Like, Miss Martian mentions having, Miss Martian mentions having cousins who are like over 100, maybe even over 200 or 300 cousins. And Miss Martian explains that there are three races of Martian: green Martians, white Martians, and red Martians. But white Martians tend to be treated with, there are many green and red Martians that treat white Martians with a prejudiced attitude. But Miss Martian mentions that her family did not treat white Martians with that prejudiced attitude that some other Martians may have done. And she also mentions that she was particularly close to her uncle, Martian Manhunter. And she says that the Martians had heard about and maybe even had the chance to observe Martian Manhunter's exploits as a member of the Justice League through TV, because Martian Manhunter had been known to send TV airwaves from Earth to Mars. And one day, Martian Manhunter had returned to Mars, and he said that there was a particular reason for why he did so. Apparently, Martian Manhunter decided that he should take on an apprentice of his own, because 4 other members of the Justice League have taken on apprentices of their own. Batman had Robin as an apprentice, Aquaman had Aqualad as an apprentice, Flash had Kid Flash as an apprentice, and Green Arrow had Speedy as an apprentice. So Martian Manhunter decided to hold a competition to determine which Martian would be able to become his apprentice. And that is to say, the Martian who was able to, the Martian who could endure and take on the challenges that would come with being a superhero. And Miss Martian had took part in this competition, and she suspects that her uncle was hesitant to let her take part in this competition because of just how dangerous being a superhero or being a crime fighter could be. But Miss Martian was still determined to win, and eventually she did win this competition. And because she was the victor of this competition, she was able to accompany Martian Manhunter when he returned to Earth. And the rest of the Young Justice team are impressed by this story, and they say that they're happy that Miss Martian was able to come to Earth and join them on the Young Justice team. But then they start to feel tired, and they decide that it's time to go to bed now. So most of the Young Justice team members do head off to bed, but Superboy stays by the campfire. Aqualad offers to keep Superboy company, but Superboy says that he'll go to bed very soon. He just wants to spend a little more time by the campfire before he goes to sleep. So Aqualad understands this, but he says that his offer is still on the table if Superboy changes his mind. So when everyone else in the Young Justice team has gone to sleep, Superboy is thinking to himself, and he thinks back to one of the, I guess you could call it a false memory, one of the false memories that Cadmus programmed into Superboy. And this particular false memory involved Superman going rogue for some reason. Superman has attacked Lois Lane, Jimmy Olsen, Perry White, and many other innocent civilians. But then suddenly Superboy arrives and challenges the rogue Superman. And after an intense battle, the Boy of Steel the Boy of Steel vanquishes the Man of Steel. And the civilians of Metropolis praise Superboy. But then we see in this memory still, Dr. Desmond and Dr. Spence are observing Superboy from his pod, and his pod suddenly cracks. And they're both very impressed about this, figuring that whatever thought is in Superboy's mind at the time must be must feel quite real. So they plan to get a new pod for Superboy, and they try to also assure one of the Cadmus employees that Superboy can't hear him, and yet Superboy remembers this particular memory. So back in the present day, or the present night in this case, Superboy is thinking to himself still about how those thoughts are being put into his mind, and he worries about how Cadmus seemed to intend to use him as a weapon, and he worries about what his future will be like, and that's how we end the issue. So there you go. We have part 2 of the 2-part story that was a breather story. A story where the Young Justice team members, the present Young Justice team members, gather together have a camping experience, and they tell stories about their origin stories. Like we mentioned before, part 1 covered Aqualad and Kid Flash's origin stories, and Superboy's origin story was already covered in the first 2 episodes of the TV series. But we still ended up getting something from Superboy, him remembering one of the false memories that was implanted into... one of the false memories that was programmed into him while he was in his pod at Cadmus. And we do get Robin's origin story, but he doesn't actually tell his teammates under Batman's orders, but rather he remembers what led to that particular event. And Miss Martian tells an origin story that contradicts details from the TV series. So let's talk about that. So in Robin's case, his origin story more or less is identical or very close to his usual origin story, but there is a notable difference. Usually the Flying Graysons only consists of Robin himself and his parents, but in this adaptation, in the Earth-16 universe, the Flying Graysons actually included Robin's uncle, aunt, and older cousin. Now, Greg Weisman did reveal that Robin in this adaptation is named after his uncle. They're both Richard Grayson, and they both have different nicknames to distinguish one another, to distinguish who people are talking to. So some people think that maybe, and it is also noted that Robin's uncle was the one member of his family who survived, but he's paralyzed for life and thus unable to take care of Robin. So some fans, maybe Greg Weisman did confirm this, or maybe this was just fans speculating, but it seems like the reason for including at least more relatives for the Flying Graysons and giving Robin's uncle the same name as Robin's civilian name was probably a way to explain or justify Robin's usual nickname, because admittedly, Robin's nickname is not one you tend to hear very often, if at all, these days. So that probably influenced it, and maybe that was also to increase the tragedy of Robin's origin stories. But yeah, it also ties in with how what Batman had spoke about in the episode Agendas, when he mentioned that Robin was inducted into the ways of crime fighting very early on, because Batman said that Robin needed to bring Tony Zuko into justice because he didn't want Robin to end up like him, Batman. So this kind of does give us a little more, helps to expand that for anyone who's not familiar with Robin's origin story. And Performance, the 24th episode of the TV series, also involved Robin wanting to clear the name of Jack Haley and his circus. And it was mentioned here that, Robin thought very highly of Jack Haley. He did say that Jack Haley was the closest he had to a grandfather, because his grandfathers had passed away by the time he was born. So, again, that particular origin story here does help to tie into certain things that were discussed in the TV series. So, like with Aqualad and Kid Flash in the previous issue, this helps to flesh out Robin's origin stories a little more compared to the essential details that were mentioned in the TV series. Now, in the case of Miss Martian, yes, Miss Martian's origin story here actually contradicts what was mentioned in the TV series. The episode Secrets actually mentioned that Miss Martian, actually stowed away on Martian Manhunter's spacecraft when he was returning to Earth after a visit from Mars. And this also ties into the episode Image, which clears up a little more about Miss Martian's origin story. So, yeah, this kind of is... and it's also interesting to note that in the tie-in comics, during Miss Martian's memories of the alleged event that led to her becoming her uncle's apprentice, the Martians were drawn like humanoid. They had a humanoid look to them, similar to the form that Martian Manhunter and Miss Martian usually take. They usually take a more humanoid appearance, which differs from the Martian's true form in this adaptation. Though this issue was released before those episodes, Secrets and Image, so again, this was probably done not to give away big reveals regarding Miss Martian's actual origins, but it was an interesting touch all the same. And yes, this issue actually did talk about the Red Martians. That's another thing, because the Green Martians and the White Martians were brought up in the TV series proper, but I don't believe the TV series brought up the Red Martians in the first 2 seasons. So it was nice to have some mention of the Red Martians. And Greg Weisman did comment once that the Red Martians in this adaptation are treated as Martian royalty. And he did confirm that Miss Martian is telling the truth about the fact that she is Martian Manhunter's niece. Her mother is Martian Manhunter's sister, so that's actually true. Miss Martian and Martian Manhunter being related is an example of related in the adaptation, and that is the case in this particular adaptation. And like we said, Superboy's memory at the end was the big thing about how, yeah, Superboy did mention that Cadmus kind of put false memories or thoughts into his head about destroying Superman. And in this memory, we do actually get to see Lois Lane. This is the only time where, so far, yeah, as of the recording of this video, this is the only time where Lois Lane had some kind of appearance in Young Justice, whether it be the TV series, the tie-in comics, or the video game. But this was a dream sequence, so Lois Lane hasn't had an official or formal appearance in the Earth-16 universe as of the recording of this video, which I know that has definitely made a lot of people wonder or very curious about why we haven't really seen Lois Lane, because Perry White actually will show up in a few more issues of the tie-in comics, 1 or 2 more, I think, and Jimmy Olsen also appears in a couple of other tie-in comic issues, and he actually does have an appearance in Season 2 as well, now that I think about it, but for some reason, yeah, we didn't get to see too much of Lois Lane, which is very curious. So otherwise, yeah, I think that's about it. So this finished up the Breather story for the tie-in comics, this 2-part Breather story, and I thought it was a nice breather before we get into the next 2-parter, which actually is going to be a different perspective about an episode from the TV series. Yeah, a character having a different perspective from an episode of the TV series. We'll go more into that in the video about that particular issue. But for now, there we go. As of this video, we've now discussed issue 6 of the Young Justice tie-in comics on this channel. Take care, and until next time,